Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had the power of the Titans part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, Tacystoes Wattpad. So let's start the video. Izuku was asleep in his All Might themed bed, a 10th anniversary limited edition pillow cover, depicting All Might in a fighting pose, facing a popular villain, Freedom's Shield, a criminal All Might fought that blew up because of his ideology. The fight was recorded by bystanders and captured Freedom's Shield's speech about corruption, discrimination, and Quirk regulations. It became a massive movement, and although Freedom's Shield did inexcusable atrocities, people regarded him as a sort of anti-hero. Izuku was gifted the pillow cover from Katsuki, although Mitsuki bought it for his 4th birthday. It was a token of their friendship, Katsuki told Izuku. It warmed Izuku's heart, and their friendship grew deeper, both considering each other as brothers. His room was filled to the brim with All Might memorabilia. Everywhere you looked, All Might would invade your senses. But as Midoriya laid there, he held a look of distress, tossing and turning, sweat sleek on his body. Izuku was having a terrible dream. He was watching himself as a 15-year-old, looking equally, if not more distressed than him. 15-year-old Izuku was in a gargantuan crowd, all the other bystanders looking as distressed. He was wide-eyed, tears building up in the corners of his evergreen eyes, both hands covering his mouth, that was no doubt gaping more than your mum's. He was shaking like a leaf, like a house of cards about to collapse. He and everybody else watching something on a massive screen that present Izuku couldn't see because of the angle he was at. Everyone was chanting something, looking stressed and yet full of hope. They were cheering someone or something on, that much was obvious. They were scared and desperate, and placing all of their hope on one thing. But then collectively, everyone's already wide eyes grew impossibly wider, despair and horror in their glassy globes, their bodies seeming to lose all life as they slouched over just a tiny bit, with little children looking like they were screaming in horror, adults seemingly not processing something, like they witnessed the impossible. But something else caught young Izuku's attention, a yellow spark of energy in the corner of his eye. He turned his attention from the people in crowd to look for the light. His eyes landed on 15-year-old Izuku once again. He had his hand raised, a deep scowl, a look of hatred, horror and anger stretching his features, nose scrunched up, eyebrows furrowing with malicious intent, pupils constricted into little dots. But the most eye-catching, the yellow lightning surrounding his body, as he raised his hand up to his waiting jaw, and as he bit into it like it was the first food he had in weeks, a coalesced yellow lightning bolt struck the teen from the heavens with a devastating fury, rocking the ground with a tremor, with the energy growing so bright, it was like staring into the sun. Izuku awoke with a start, his blanket getting thrown aside in his violent awakening. Breathing heavily, Izuku put a hand to his heart. It was beating a mile a minute. Taking a deep breath in, and slowly letting it out, he repeated the progress a few times until he started calming down. Looking around his room to make sure he was really gone, no longer in the streets of a city, and really in his room. Once satisfied, he asked himself, with a shaky voice, "What did I just dream about? That was so weird," he asked, uncertain of what to call that experience. Izuku, having returned to the realm of reality, looked down at his small shivering body that was coated in sweat. Grossed out, he decided, I feel so sticky, I should take a shower." He said, "Maybe Mum will be proud I took a shower without her needing to tell me to," and his face suddenly brightened to astronomical levels at the thought of making his mother take pride at his level of self-sustainability. Quickly hopping from his bed to the floor, a little too quick, as in result of his swiftness, he landed face first into the sandpapery carpet. He laid on the ground he roughly came into contact with, while letting out a whine of pain. Fighting through it, he raised himself up. Quickly regaining his vigor, he grabbed an All Might figurine from his bedside table, then quickly made his way over to his closet door. Reaching up on his tippy toes, his small hands pounced to the cold as ice handle. He let a little shiver rack his tiny body as he quickly threw it open. Reaching inside, he quickly procured his all-might towel. Having acquired everything necessary for his journey, Izuku took into a dead sprint. He easily nabbed a hold of his door handle, as it was lower than his closet's one, opened it, revealing his all-might-themed nameplate, and scrambled down the hall to the bathroom, not even registering his mother watching from the living, having heard the thump his fall caused, ran into the bathroom door as a result of his going too fast. Barely letting it even show, he quickly opened the door and shut it behind himself. Throwing his towel onto the floor, he swiftly disrobed. "Oh, that boy, he's so full of energy. It's lovely to see." She smiled warmly. Can't say the same of his clumsiness though, she thought with a grimace, remembering all the times he'd accidentally broken something. Izuku, now naked, picked up his dirty pajamas and chucked them into the washing basket. He opened the shower door, closing it behind him, and reached up to the water faucets. Turning on the hot water first, he made sure to stay out of the way of the shower head spray. Quickly putting his hand into the water, it was still heating up. So retracted his hand from how cold the water was. Waiting a few seconds, the water started to steam, indicating its temperature rise. Izuku put his hand into the water again, only to quickly retract it, this time because it was searing hot to his skin. "Yep, it's definitely done," he wheezed with a strained voice. Reaching up, he adjusted the water to be just right. Having showered for 15 minutes, cleaning himself and dressing, he exited to the living room. His mum had made him breakfast and packed his school bag for him. "Good morning, Mum," he excitedly cheered, rushing over to his mother, who was sitting on the couch watching TV. "Ah, good morning, sweetie." She was stopped by Izuku, who had tackled his mum into a strong hug. Giggling, she returned the embrace, while stroking his messy black hair with green highlights. Quickly moving on to breakfast, Izuku inhaled his food faster than Kirby and dashed to the door, slipping on his red boot-like shoes. In such a rush to leave, he forgot to tie his shoelaces. He bid his mum goodbye and rushed to his apartment's elevator. Pressing the floor button, he quickly made his way out of the building. Running through the streets to the bus stop, he was running so fast, he tripped over a shoelace and face planted for the second time in one morning. Poop. That one hurt. He rubbed his grazed nose while laying down. "Need some help?" he heard a squeaky voice ask. Looking up, he saw what looked like a school uniform and a pair of gloves floating. He didn't recognize the uniform. A glove floated towards him on the ground, outstretched for him to grab hold of. "Thank you so much, that was very kind of you," Izuku gratefully replied. "Oh, it's no big deal," the same voice answered, while a glove made a dismissive hand gesture. "Either way, it was kind," Izuku earnestly replied. "Thanks," she replied. "My name is Izuku Midoriya. What's yours?" he inquired, with an interested tone. "My name is Toru Hagakure. Nice to meet you, Izuku," she replied with a voice filled with confidence and joy. "Well, Toru, I've got to get to school. Thanks, and I'll hopefully see you around," he cheerfully exclaimed as he ran off again. "Yes, CYA," Toru called back. Izuku made it in time for the bus and got to school safely. Entering the gates to his primary school, he ran to make it to class and meet his friend Kaken. He entered and quickly scanned the room for his friend. Finding blonde, spiky hair, he rushes to it with reckless abandon. "Kaken, I had the weirdest dream. It was different, I can't tell why, but I just know it has to be related to my quirk," he rambled. Kaken looked over at the greenette and scowled a little. "What the heck are you talking about, Deku?" He spat the word Deku like it offended him. A crestfallen look fell upon Izuku's face. I think it dash. I don't care, you Deku," he yelled. Izuku, upset at his friend's attitude towards him, lately left and sat at his desk waiting for class to start. Plus time skip to end of school. Izuku quickly took after Kaken and his friends. "Hey Kaken, what are you doing?" he asked. "Playing hero, you dummy," he said with squinted eyes gazing at Izuku. "Can I play?" "No way. You have to have a quirk to play this," he heatedly snapped. But dash. What is it, you idiot?" "That's right, didn't your stupid quirk make you pee yourself in your sleep?" he laughed. "Fine, you can play. But stop lying about having a quirk, you dweeb," Katsuki mocked. As the group of children walked in a forest, they were playing hero. Katsuki and his sidekicks were hunting down a villain. Where are you? Katsuki screeched madly. The heroes had split up to cover more ground. Bakugo heard a twig snap from a couple tens of meters diagonally to his left. His head snapped in that direction, his eyes landing on a bruised and bloody Izuku. There you are, villain! He yelled, charging at him. Izuku squeaked and promptly ran away from Kaken. As he was running, he tripped over a tree branch while looking behind himself to check Bakugo wasn't gaining on him. He fell hard to the ground and rolled down a steep hill. A bump at the end of the hill that cut off into a mini cliff launched Izuku roughly into the air. The bump hit Izuku extremely hard on his stomach, badly bruising and knocking the wind out of him. Izuku had no time to register that the hill abruptly steeped down, forming a 15-meter cliff face, with sharp bushes at the bottom. Izuku quickly descended from his airborne state, gravity quickly claiming him and dragging him down, straight into the bushes. Pained sharp inhale, the thorns dig deeper into Izuku thanks to gravity. Izuku winded can't even scream his blinding pain. He feels all of it, every excruciating detail. The thorns digging into his legs, slowly pushing past every muscle fiber, tearing them apart, thorns in his arms, ripping at him, the blood oozing out of him, staining his body, but the worst pain was in his eye. He landed face down, and a thorn managed to stab through his eyelid into his eye, blinding him. Izuku started wailing, trying to slowly push himself up, but his arms gave out, and he ended up falling further. Breathe. He tried pushing up again. He managed to get himself out of the bush, but doing so the thorns were forcibly ripped back out. He gripped at his left eye, blood spewing out of it. He collapsed to his knees, sobbing and crying in pain. Stop, please make it all stop, he hysterically thought, crying into his hands. Which sparked a little when he thought that. Stop it. More sparks, which were stronger. Stop it. He screamed into the air. A second later, a massive flash of yellow lightning cracked through the air, rocketing down at impossible speeds. Striking Izuku with such force, a massive shockwave struck the surrounding trees, hitting them with such force, it split them into little pieces. After about 10 seconds the lightning stopped striking the earth, and the massive shockwave and tremors ceased. And in the middle of the new clearing stood a massive humanoid creature, whose height was approximately 15 meters, had very well-defined muscles, and long dark green, almost entirely black hair, which reached its shoulders, piercing double-lidded green eyes, a round nose, and 2 sets of teeth, with no lips. It also lacked any genitalia. It stood still, glaring out ahead of itself, at nothing. Then suddenly got into a wide stance, with its legs spread out, arms out at its sides, fists clenched. It looked up at the sky, took a deep breath, and let out an earth-rumbling, deep guttural roar. Izuku was in a daze. Nearly nothing was being registered in his brain, except for his want to trample everything and anyone who tried hurting him. The 15-meter titan roared, while stomping his right foot so hard into the ground, a shockwave of air pressure, dust and dirt sent the rubble of the earth its mighty stomp created careening, while also sending the little pieces of wood from the destroyed trees rocketing into multiple other trees nearby, leaving the trees scraped from the tiny pieces of timber, so forcefully it looked like gunshots. After the dust cloud obscuring the behemoth dissipated, unfocused, rage-filled green orbs was looking out at its next target. What the heck was that? Katsuki asked aloud, expecting the no answers that came as he was alone. Rag came another distant noise. It was faint, indicating it was a ways away, sounding somewhere between humanoid and something straight out of a fantasy book. This sound most decidedly didn't come from anything that was supposed to be in this forest, Katsuki deduced. I'm not scared, but it's not really worth the trouble, he thought, smirking, so sure of himself that nothing could beat him, walked in the opposite direction, to continue looking for that Deku. Plus, I won't ever let something like that happen again. I won't let anyone hurt me anymore. Izuku monologued in his head. He felt like he had a terrible fever and was burning up to impossible temperatures. Anyone who tries to hurt me, I'll make sure they can't ever again. he thought, a determination burning hotter than his body filled his every being, pushing him forwards. "I won't let anyone. I'll kill them all." It screeched, its body that was already sprinting, got faster and faster as it approached the city. 𝗬𝗎𝗪. The Titan was just outside the city, when it pushed off its left leg so hard, it was destroyed, leaving nothing below the knee, except a bloody stump with some bone marrow and muscle fibers exposed. 𝗧𝗪𝗏. It roared as it fell off balance due to the sudden loss of its left leg. As a result, its body collided with a building, easily decimating it, as it fell through the building into the next one as it collided into the pavement road. Due to the building being structurally unstable, it began to tilt in on the opposite side of the Titan, into a road filled with civilians. "What is that?" a man asked as he looked up, and saw the way he was going to die. "Oh my God. Run!" he screamed in absolute petrify. "Mummy, what's going on?" a little girl asked, already sobbing from fear. The building creaked in a little more. "Squee, maybe if we run as fast as we can, we'll make it." The mum frantically thought. She grabbed a hold of her daughter's hand. "Sweetie, we need to run," she said. She hoisted her daughter up, carrying her over her shoulder. "Mum, I don't wanna die," she cried, scared of death. "Don't worry, sweetie." Her mother tried to sound as reassuring as possible, but her own voice cracked with insurmountable fear, as her legs carried her as far as they could. SSQQ, snap. The building was falling in slow motion. The girl looking over her mother's shoulder saw it all, the shadow it cast growing ever bigger, as the little girl prayed for help, for a hero to save her mother and her. Such help wouldn't arrive in time. As the building connected with the floor at such force, the victims only had to endure a couple seconds of excruciating pain, the pain of having your body crushed into the pavement. The little girl had one thought before her body crushed into paste against the tar of the road: all might. "Someone please." The Titan collapsed in the rubble of the buildings it teared down, was wafting steam from its left knee nub, as its bone grew to normal size in seconds, and new muscle fibers and flesh stitched around the bone, reforming its left leg as good as new. The thing slowly got back up. Now even more enraged, it let out a guttural roar of pure anger, and a roar that ensured more chaos to come. 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐽𝐻. His sidekick called through their earpiece comms. 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐽𝐻 raised his hand up to his ear, pushing the button and holding it down. He asked with a bored sigh. "Sigh, what now? Cat stuck in a tree?" "No, sir. A massive villain has been reported in Shiganshina Street. Its full abilities are unknown, but it's reported to be around 17 meters tall, and have an unnatural amount of strength," he quickly informed. 𝗵𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐽𝐻 shot to attention immediately. "How many reported confirmed casualties currently?" he quickly asked, jumping off the roof, quickly making a wooden slide to safely get down. About halfway he shot his arm out, wood expanding out to wrap around light posts to swing to his destination faster. "I'll have to call her just in case it proves too much," he thought. Buildings fell, and more civilians died. Then suddenly, when the Titan went to destroy another skyscraper, pulling its massive, muscly arm back, it prepared to throw a simple jab. Its arm rocketed out towards its target only to be met with resistance. Wood quickly wrapped around its bicep and down to its wrist. It looked back to see a man with the wood connected to both arms, desperately trying to stop his punch from decimating the building. It grabbed the stretched wood between its arm and the man, and snapped it like it was nothing but a twig. The wood no longer connected to the man commanding it. He turned to face him while grabbing a hold of the wood constricting his arm, ripped it off while still looking at the man on a building opposite the Titan. "Well, you're very ugly, dastardly." The Titan, not caring about monologues or speeches, tried hitting the man while he was speaking. The man wrapped his wood around its neck, swinging himself so he was at the back of the beast. He quickly sprout wood to wrap around its arms and legs, squeezing the wood around its ankles. The 15-meter man tripped over onto its stomach. The man quickly commanded the wood to position its body spread eagle, wood constricting its wrists and ankles. "There, now he's restrained," 𝗵𝐻𝐽𝐽𝐽𝐻 thought. The Titan tried moving his right arm. The restraints were so tight, it only budged. He roared in effort, 𝐴𝐵𝐵𝐺. He managed to break free, but his hand was cut off at the wrist. He did the same for his left, only for it to take everything below the elbow. He sat up and watched his hands steam, his bone protrude, and muscle and skin knit together. What the hell? How many quirks do you have? 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 asked, panicked. The Titan tried stomping him into the ground, but 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 deftly dodged, then used his wood to contract around Izuku's neck and pull himself behind him again. Izuku instinctively put pressure on his back and neck muscles, and thought about emitting steam in concentrated bursts. 𝗧 and Izuku can use all Titan abilities, but they work the same. So he can use the colossal steam, and just like the more steam it uses the smaller it gets, so will Izuku's Titan. Something like this if used too much, skinny and fragile, so he can't spam it. 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 caught in the steam blast, got a lot of second-degree burns, by lessening the damage by creating a wood barrier. 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 collapsed to his knees. He passed out from exhaustion, with the Titan gazing down at him. 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 woods laid, battered and broken in the rubble created from the raging behemoth above him. He took shallow breaths. His broken ribs prevented any more than quick inhales. The pain was unbearable, and in an attempt to lessen said pain and damage, his body reacted itself, pure instinct stopping him from taking deep breaths. But that doesn't help when BLD fills your throat, drowning you. Coughing. He groaned after he coughed up his own BLD. His breath sputtering, he could only hope reinforcements come soon, not just for him, but for the civilians he couldn't save by stopping this rampage. Please come on, don't tell me she has another Q. He mentally bemoaned. Meanwhile, she stared at her phone with a quizzical expression, eyes twinkling with opportunity. As she read the message sent to her by her partner. Shinj Red Heart, hey, might need help, can you come just in case? Sure, just tell me where 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗺 location sent. It's a villain with a quirk like yours apparently, some sort of giant with super strength, seems to be unable of conscious thought, just like someone on trigger when their quirk goes berserk. 𝐻𝐬𝐽 come as quick as I can see soon. She was currently getting driven to Shiganshina, the location of the message. She was kind of excited. It sounds horrible, considering the person was undoubtedly the cause of several innocent deaths. But this was the first time she was going to fight another person with a quirk that was very similar to hers. They could be my nemesis. The Bolt has Inverted Bolt, 𝗏𝗏 has Grey Drake, and 𝗏𝗏𝗏 has Captain Bolt. I'll finally have my own. She squealed with jubilation in her mind. She approached the location rapidly, and she was preparing herself. As they got closer, rubble and debris were scattered around on the streets, blocking the way. This is as far as I can take you, sorry. The taxi driver informed her. She told him it was fine, and paid her $27.95 and hopped out, running through the city, full of rubble and destruction. As she ran past a particularly large boulder, she saw an arm attached to a presumably crushed body of someone, with BLD pooling under it. She felt terrible and quickened her pace, hoping to stop any more casualties. She eventually arrived at the marked location, with nothing but destruction visible. Okay, so they aren't here anymore. She thought about what to do, and decided to just transform. Having her quirk for nearly 17 years, it wasn't even a conscious thought anymore. She grew to her full 20-meter glory. Being this tall, she easily gazed over the skyscrapers, and saw the other giant approximately half a kilometer away. She started jogging towards it, being careful not to cause any more destruction. She quickly got close enough for the Titan to hear and feel the vibrations her footfalls caused. Its muscled back facing her, it peered over his toned shoulder, only one eye visibly glaring at her, with eyes that seemed to glow a neon green. It shifted its position, standing in a sideways stance. It gazed at her with an intensity that couldn't be recreated. It cracked its jaw open to let the steam trapped escape. No words were shared, nothing said or spoken. They scanned the opposition, looking for something to exploit. At least until the Titan charged the giant. It threw a wild right swing, which was quickly blocked by MT Lady's left arm. She countered with a right cross aimed for its temple. The blow struck true. The Titan staggered back, trying to regain its lost balance, but before it could stabilize, the giant pressed on, punching the Titan with an uppercut to the stomach. The Titan was sent back from the force of the punch, getting close to a building. The Titan finally got its balance back, and thought of something. Lady, relentless as she was, tried pressing on. She swung her right arm out in a quick jab, which was dodged by the Titan in a less than deft way, but got the task done either way. Still leaning to the left, the Titan used the opportunity presented. 𝗵𝗲 had lowered her guard, and the Titan was about to punish that. Lunging forward, the Titan grabbed a hold of her neck with one hand, spun her around and shoved her up against the building. The Titan had her up against the building, left forearm to her throat keeping her stuck and choking, right arm cocked back. The behemoth shot its fist like a cannonball into her face. It hit gold, directly to 𝗵𝗲's nose. She felt it cracking under the power, blood leaking down to her mouth. The Titan let go of her, stepping back. 𝗵𝗲, still dazed, couldn't do anything yet. The Titan took another couple steps back, its footfalls causing mini earthquakes. It stopped about 15 meters from her, and lowered itself slightly. Then it dashed forward, just before 𝗵𝗲. On its final step it reared its right leg back, and kicked 𝗵𝗲's right shin with so much power. Not only did it shatter her tibia and fibula, it also amputated its own shin, which was unable to handle the power in the hit. 𝗵𝗲's balance, upset by the loss of weight support and the force of the kick, fell sideways, right arm first into the ground. The Titan similarly fell to the ground in much the same way. The Titan, unbothered by its own lack of a limb, crawled over to 𝗵𝗲, steam rising from its right leg, already working to fix itself. But it seemed to be running out of energy rapidly. 𝗵𝗲, knowing better than to let an opportunity go to waste, used her left leg, lifting it up, getting ready to drop it on the Titan's head that was rapidly approaching with its body dragging itself to her. Once in range, she thrusted her leg down, her calcaneus heel bone on its skull. On a normal 15-meter human skull, it would only crack at most from the power she used, but this Titan's head, it exploded in a gory display of blood, brain matter and brain fluid. Its eyes had also bursted. In shock, 𝗵𝗲 stared horrified. She hadn't meant to do that. She hadn't meant to kill them. Even if they were the cause of tragedy, heroes don't kill. The body was no longer regenerating. Instead, all the blood it had shed started to steam. Almost like it was hot water evaporating in freezing cold air. The blood that had sprayed onto 𝗵𝗲's face burnt her, letting out a yell of pain as she clutched her burning face. Not too long after it started, it stopped, leaving 𝗵𝗲's face burnt, but not too crispy. She looked over to the dead body laying stomach down, head caved into the pavement, with its crown point vertex crushed. Strangely, there was no blood. She guessed all of it evaporated when she was getting her face burnt. The Titan was steaming, but there was one place that was steaming the most. Everywhere else, the steam looked like the condensation you would breath out on a cold day. But at the Titan's neck, the nape specifically, it looked like someone had poured the hottest, most boiling water in a snowstorm. In other words, it looked like the nape was billowing more steam than your mum does smoke with her cigarettes. She squinted, trying to see what was causing such a reaction, and she could faintly make out a small outline of a person. Staying cautious, she kept her guard up. This person could be hostile. The steam started dying down, and so the figure she saw could be seen. With nothing obstructing her eyes, she clearly made out what looked like a child, with unruly black hair with green highlights. She also saw something very concerning, something looking like flesh connected to his face. The Titan's flesh was connected to the little boy's cheeks, as if he were a part of it, connected to it. She wanted to stand up and rush to help the kid, but her injuries had exhausted her. And now that the battle was over, the adrenaline was leaving her system, resulting in even more exhaustion. She reached out to the boy, struggling to keep her eyelids that felt heavier than a bus open. Such was a losing battle, and eventually, sleep enveloped her. An ambulance with its sirens whirling sped down the city street, away from the chaos. "He's crashing," one shouted. Inside, a boy, no older than 5, is seen laying, with a face mask helping him breathe. His body was jostling constantly, from the speed they were driving. A strenuous procedure was underway, hopefully keeping the boy alive long enough to make it to a hospital. Patient has multiple third-degree burns over his body, most likely a severe concussion and terrible nerve damage. Another nurse listed off his injuries. "We'll have to get to the facility soon." His grave tone told enough. Unless treated with the needed medical equipment, the boy wouldn't make it. The only thing off with this scene is the direction they're headed. They passed the hospital about 1 kilometer back, so where were they going? What do you think they'll do with him? One asked, probably make him work off his debt. One answered, but how? What kind of work? You haven't heard. Heard of what? Destructive quirk awakenings are becoming more and more common. The government can't just let it slide, even if it's the right thing to do. If they do that, they'll lose millions upon millions. So what? Imprison infants? No. They indoctrinate them into a system to work off their debt and make use of them. A silence ensued until the nurse motioned for him to continue. They get the parents to sign the rights off their child, forcefully if needed. They put kids into facilities, raise them on diets and extreme exercise. Make them the perfect soldiers. The kids grow up and become a part of the military, to use their quirks in wars and 𝗧𝗏. But some are raised to become heroes. Heroes? What? They're popular, have sway in the media, everyone loves them. Only the cream of the CRP are allowed into that program. As the conversation was finishing up, the ambulance arrived at a facility that looked extremely militaristic. Barbed-wired fences circled the building, 2 meters tall. Guard towers on each corner, just in case someone tried breaking free. They pulled up to the gate in the fence, guarded by 4 soldiers, wearing black bulletproof vests, black gas masks, black combat suits with black steel-capped boots. Equipped with a gun, the model of which looked like a hybrid of an AR-15 and an M4A1, with 50-round magazines and a hybrid thermal scope. The ambulance screeched to a halt meters before the gate. The soldiers had 2 on each side. 2 approached the vehicle, 1 from each side. 1 stopped by the passenger door, while the other approached the drivers. I'm gonna need to see your ID. His gruff and on-guard voice graveled out, hand reached up. I'm sure. The driver quickly squeaked. He turned and rummaged around in his glove box, growing ever more nervous the longer he couldn't fumble upon it. The guard on alert was getting ready to ask him to leave, and if he didn't, give the signal for the snipers in the watchtowers to open fire. Here it is. He happily exclaimed, pulling his ID out of his glove compartment and handing it over to the guard. He quickly took it and walked over towards the right side of the fence where a machine was located. He came to a halt in front of it and scanned the ID card for authenticity and to see if he had the correct clearance level. Ding! The guard heard the noise for acceptance and walked back over. Handing the card back, he signaled back to the one guard on the right to open the gate. It slid open with some resistance, and the guard nodded to the ambulance to drive through. Oh, thank God. The driver, happy to oblige, quickly put his foot down. The vehicle entered the facility, in a bay used for drop-offs. With no words exchanged, men in hazard suits closed in, opening the back doors. Quickly taking hold of the gurney Izuku was laying on. Rushing towards a double door in the bay, 2 men ahead of the carriers opened it wide, allowing easy passage through. In the room the doors led to were multiple machines and beds. As they lifted Izuku off the gurney into one of the many infirmary beds, strapping him down, and plugging multiple tubes into his body, a man watched from behind the one-way glass. In a full-body business suit, slicked back short white hair, lime green eyes and thin lips stretched up in a sadistic smirk full of malice, he happily chirped in a smooth voice, "Welcome to your new home, recruit." Turning away, walking into his office, he whispered to himself in a voice void of any emotion, "I know you'll just love it here, Eldian." Slowly waking, Izuku turned trying to get more comfortable, but felt like his shoulder was resting atop of hard stone. Slowly opening his viridian eyes full of crust, his eyes tried adjusting to the new light, however little it was. Sitting up, he quickly took in his room, or this room he was in. He didn't recognize it all. Dark gray concrete walls full of cracks with nothing decorating them, nothing in the room at all. It was dark, he could see fine, but finer details were hard. No furniture, no closet, nothing. Izuku's breath started quickening. He was slowly beginning to panic, trying to figure out where he was, but unable to come to any conclusions, only made his mental state quickly deteriorate. Where am I? He frantically thought. He looked down at himself, his clothing, but only saw bland and plain white shirts and shorts. As he was inspecting himself, he noticed a pair of cuffs. Something around both his wrists, they were black. He inspected them, not seeing any way of unclamping them. He tried prying them off. But they were hard, extremely durable, and stronger than any normal human could bend. Seeing it was a lost cause only made him panic harder. What are these things? What do they do? What are they for? Why can't I get them off? He was quickly spiraling, before a noise caught his attention. In the dark corners of the room were two other children, each dressed like him, plain white shirts and shorts with black cuffs. They were all in different corners. One kid with baby blue hair, light skin and yellow eyes, was in a similar state as Izuku, panicking. The other, with white hair, gray eyes and a single freckle beneath his left eye, was much calmer. Actually, he seemed like he didn't feel anything. Izuku, too timid to break the silence, sat for a while, doing nothing to bring any attention towards himself. After a couple seconds, the child with baby blue hair broke the silence. "Where are we?" He squeaked, his shrill voice breaking with fear, eyes wide and scanning the room. Speaking up, the white-haired kid informed, "Your new home." Nothing more was said. Sitting in silence for an hour, Izuku decided to get to know them a bit. "Why your guys' names?" He spoke with all the confidence he could muster to break the silence. The child with baby blue hair looked up at Izuku, with big and innocent eyes. "My name is Roku." He trailed off towards the end. The now named Roku and Izuku both looked over to the white-haired kid with expecting gazes. Blank-faced, he responded in a voice befitting a robot, "There's no point in both of you knowing." Confused as to what that meant, Izuku was about to inquire about what he meant, but never got the chance as the door slammed open with unbridled force. A tall burly man walked in. "All right, so you two are the new members in the hero training, huh?" Confused by his count of only two when there were three of them, he couldn't question it as he continued talking. "All of you up, follow me." As unemotional as always, White Hair stood, unaffected by everything. Roku and Izuku, however, scared and confused, weren't as compliant, staying huddled in their corners. Seeing they weren't doing what he told them, the man stepped further into the room. Gazing at Izuku, he asked, "You're the one who can heal, right?" Izuku, confused, didn't say anything. Angered that Izuku didn't answer his question, he pulled out a pistol from his back pocket, aimed it at Izuku's right thigh and squeezed the trigger. Unused to hearing gunfire, Roku and Izuku's ears rung, the sheer volume disorienting them. Eyes squeezed shut from the pain, neither realized what just happened. Izuku's ears were still ringing but not as loud, so he cracked open his right eye, and seeing red spreading through his once white pants, both shot open in alarm. Pain now registering, Izuku couldn't stop looking at the hole in his leg, his muscles visible. It stung, so horribly his head was spinning it hurt. Shouting out in pain, Izuku clutched his thigh with both small hands. The BLD never stopped, covering his hands. "Make it stop. Please. Make it stop," he cried. Eyes clutched shut, Izuku didn't see the steam starting to rise from his leg, so engrossed in the pain. The pain alleviated a tiny bit, then a tiny bit more. Eventually the pain stopped altogether. Scared, but also relieved the pain had stopped, Izuku hesitantly opened his fear-filled viridian eyes, which quickly turned curious. The wound in his leg had healed. What just happened? Was that his quirk? Is he able to make people feel pain? Was it an illusion? No, kid, my quirk is to change my eye color, he informed, changing his eyes to crimson red, back to cerulean. He was mumbling again, huh? But wait, what happened then? Now hurry up, get up and follow me. He growled in a cold and demanding tone. Alright, I'll be honest, I'm gonna skip a lot of this. I'm getting a bit bored and my writing is getting pretty terrible. I had a lot planned, so if you want, I can make a book dedicated to Deku's origin and time in the facility that turned him into what he is. WhatIf's response was to her child going missing and more. So, a continuous, loud and repetitive beep filled a teenager's room. Rising up, looking over at his plain alarm clock on his bedside table, he stared with contained contempt. His training drilled into him. He knew to never leave the instructors waiting, lest you want to face severe consequences. His calloused hand raised up to his right eye, an eye patch serving as his constant reminder. Having brooded enough, he swung his legs over the edge. Standing up, he slowly ambled over to his end suite. Gripping the cold as ice brass doorknob, he creaked it open. Stepping inside the dark as night room, his superior eyesight easily found the light 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Turning the light on, the teen took in his surroundings. A toilet in the left corner, in pristine condition. A shower tower boxed in with glass in the right. A mirror with a sink and cabinet below, with a toothbrush holder resting atop. Gazing into the mirror at himself, he focused on his white variation of an angular fringe. Focusing on his singular visible crimson red eye, he studied his slack face, barren of emotion. Studying his clothes with impassion, he took in his ice-white long-sleeved shirt and ice-white pants that go down to his ankles. Growing bored, he took hold of his plain white toothbrush and toothpaste. Squeezing the white paste onto his toothbrush, he ran it under the water faucet for a couple seconds. "Tatsu, you're up," a passive voice called. "Yes." Came the semi-emotionless voice of the white-haired Tatsu. How are you wide awake already, you freak?" The same high-pitched voice called again. "Because training worked on me. Not all of us are able to regenerate Tatsu replied, stopping his hand that was instinctively raising to his eye patch. He received no reply. Instantly Tatsu's eyes slightly widened. "I was just kidding, sorry." He called out in a sympathetic voice. "I know he was just joking, but he's right. I've had it so easy compared to him, compared to everyone." Izuku's eyes squeezed shut in guilt. "What did I do to deserve this?" He thought as he held his left hand up, proceeding to wrap his right hand around his left middle finger and pulling in an awkward direction that broke his middle finger's bone. The sickening crunch echoed through Deku's suite, letting nothing but a slight groan out at the pain. He watched as steam steadily built up around his middle finger, and once dissipating, showed his fine middle finger. How many other kids deserved this more than me, but didn't have it? He thought, more guilt building up. An image of a kid with light blue hair and indiscernible eyes cowering in a dark room's corner. That kid I met, I can't even remember his name. Taking a deep breath, Izuku calmed down. Opening his eyes, he looked at himself. A bush of messy green hair, a face filled with freckles and green eyes stared back. "Midoriya, you ready?" Tatsu's monotone voice asked. Taking one last glance at his reflection, that showed him wearing his green short-sleeved shirt and khaki cargo pants, he called back, "Yeah, is it time to go?" His answer was Tatsu opening the front door. "Okay then, let's go." Stepping past Yue's front gate felt weird. This was his dream, wasn't it? He couldn't remember what he actually dreamed of, to what the facility wanted him to achieve. Stepping inside with Tatsu by his side, they both strolled forward, taking in the surrounding excitement and anxiousness of the other teens. Taking another step forward, Deku tripped on an uneven tile. Quickly catching himself, Izuku did little more than stumble. Senses always alert of danger, Izuku picked up footsteps rapidly approaching, so he spun around and saw a hand shooting towards himself. Instinct took over his body. He quickly grabbed and restrained the hand's wrist, pulling it down to their sides. His other hand shot forward, taking a hold of the person's throat. Izuku's senses returning to him, told him he wasn't in danger. Eyes widening in realization, Izuku quickly released the person, getting ready to apologize. Looking at them, it finally sunk into Izuku's brain that they were a girl. Instantly getting flustered, he stumbled over his words. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." He quickly spoke, his voice extremely apologetic. "Wow, you have some reflexes. Sorry. I saw you stumble and thought you were going to fall. Isn't this so nerve-wracking?" She spoke with exuberance. "Oh, you a 𝗧𝗧. Anyway, I should get going. Don't want to be late. Good luck, you two." She shouted while running in the direction of the exam building. Izuku was shocked still. He talked to a girl. "Wow, I talked to a girl," he said out loud. Tatsu, who waited with Izuku, said, "What a way with women you have." In a deadpan. "No, if I didn't know you, I wouldn't ever be able to tell if you're being sarcastic." "You pages," Izuku replied with a serious voice. They were staring at each other with no emotion clear. Until simultaneously Tatsu's lips quirked up a bit, and Izuku let out a chuckle while grinning. Sitting at a table with sheets of papers from the written test, I get bored. I look around at my peers, seeing most of them solely focusing on the questions. There were a few done already, such as myself, that were either smart enough to blaze through, or the less bright individuals who just guessed hoping they guessed right. But what drew my attention was their hands. Scarred and filled with the evidence of their hard work, all the hardships they overcame to be here. And as I look down at my own hands, a frown quickly settles across my face. My hands, that are smooth, unblemished, and soft. Everyone here deserves this more than you. My head snapped up, looking around the room for anyone that might have said that. You didn't work for this. My eyes, wide open and hysterical, look back at my hands. Yes, I did, I mumbled quietly to myself. Did you? Is that why you don't have any marks on your body? All the hard work you did. Having enough, I covered my ears. But that didn't stop the whispers, and everything they said filled me with anger. I worked to be here, I went through hell to be here. I deserve to be here. All right, time's up, everyone head to the bus that takes you dash. Not waiting another second, I stood and grabbed my complete test. As I was walking out, I put it on the teacher's desk. The whispers stopped and I sighed in relief, although I was still angry. I take bus 7, Sue, where is bus 7? I mumble to myself, scanning the bus numbers. There it is. Making my way over, I get to the bus and climb in, taking a seat near the back. Not in the mood for socializing, I rest my elbow against the window and rest my check in my palm. Eventually, after everyone was on board the bus, the driver made sure everyone was sitting before driving to the test area. I was trying to mind my own business, keep to myself, and I was. But my mood got worse and worse over time. Everyone on the bus was shouting and talking obnoxiously loud. My frustration kept growing and growing. Even though everyone was shouting, I still heard the whispers, and they were deafening. Looking out the window in a trance, I watched the scenery pass by. After a while, the bus finally stopped, which jolted me out of my thoughts. Waiting for everyone else to exit, I stayed sitting down. When the last person finally left, I pulled my phone out of my pocket. Tapping onto messages, I hit the contact named them. As I looked at the previous messages, I scowled. I typed my report. I have entered you. And am in the middle of the practical test. Not waiting for a reply, knowing it would just be threats of what would happen should I fail, I slung my phone back into my pants' right pocket, stood up and exited the bus. Waiting outside the gate was nerve-wracking. I was constantly on edge, not only to be ready at a moment's notice, but the eyes I could feel boring into my back with scrutiny. One less opponent to worry about, I guess. I heard someone say out loud so I could hear. My shitty mood just reached a whole new level. Containing my anger to not lash out at the kid, I lost focus, so when Present Mike yelled start from the speaker, I was completely rooted to the ground. What are you waiting for? There's no countdowns in a real battle. Everyone started rushing in. Everyone but me, of course. Look at that kid in Area 7, he's just standing there. Someone with a low, croaky voice called from the monitoring room. He must be confident in his abilities. A monotone voice drawled from behind the speaker's scarf. I rushed in as fast as I could to make up for lost time, panicking. I mentally screamed. Instantly stopping with an exasperated face, I realize I should just transform now to cover more distance and no one's here, so they won't get in the way. Picturing the design in my head, a short 4-meter titan with hard nails and a strong jaw, a faceplate made of bone, and long green hair, I lift my left hand up with my pointer finger extended and wrap my right hand around it. Bracing for the pain that comes with a broken finger, and bend it unnaturally. With the audible crack of my finger and a grimace on my face, I look at myself for a second, yellow lightning dancing across my body, and nearly instantly a massive yellow thunderbolt careens down, striking me violently. With a monumental boom, the earth shakes, the ground cracking just a tiny bit from the force, dust shooting out from the point of impact. And leaping out from the dust was a monster. The 4-meter quadruple titan ran through the streets with the power of 20 men. An unstoppable force of nature. Spotting a group of the robots he was meant to destroy, Izuku didn't know how many or how much they were worth, but that didn't stop him. Rushing the bots with ferocity, he leaped into the air, his clawed hand finding the robot's head, and with the force of him falling back to the ground he crushed it into the road. Hearing the rest rush him from behind, he whipped his head back, jaw already open, and the closest robot had its torso bit into. The force of the bite broke the robot in two with a loud screech of metal. The robots took up positions away from the Titan's reach to open fire with their RBB bullets. Raising its front two hands in front of its face, he focused HRD on his hands. His already sharp claws got longer and harder, his hands seemed to crystallize, turning into a light blue harder than rock substance. The already harmless bullets became nothing but pebbles getting thrown by a 2-year-old. During a break in the firing, Izuku rushed over to the building on his right, using his razor-sharp claws to climb with ease. Jumping to the left building, he got closer to the robots. The robots could do nothing but fire non-lethal RBB bullets at the thing as it stalked closer and closer. With a roar, the Titan leapt at the closest two robots below, outstretching its sharp hands to impale the scrap as it landed. The Titan's nails easily pierced through to the other side, effectively getting two robots stuck to its hands. With its superior strength, it swiped out at a building wall, the robots sliding off its claws from the force of the swing, careening into the building, easily shattering the wall and flying into the empty space inside. Leaping over to the decimated wall, the Titan used its big hands to pick up the smaller rubble and chuck it with enough force to pierce metal at the remaining robots. The rubble passed through the robots, destroying their circuitry as easy as a hot knife cuts soft butter. As they fell to the floor, sparks of electricity frizzled from the scrap heaps. Izuku started having trouble controlling the Titan, but tried pushing through. Everything was hot, it was so hard to move. 5 minutes left. Mike's loud, obnoxious voice relayed through the speakers across the testing area. 5 minutes left. Izuku thought, struggling to even think coherently. Inside the Titan it was getting harder and harder to handle. F this. Too hot to handle anymore, the Titan fell down, laying on its stomach with its neck open and exposed. Steam came wafting off in waves, and eventually the flesh on its neck started moving. The nape tore open, and out emerged Izuku, his face severely burnt with tendrils of flesh still connected to his face. The fresh oxygen helped Izuku start thinking and behaving normally. I've destroyed enough robots to at least get in, definitely not enough for first place though. He contemplated. 2 minutes left. I should be whoa, what the hell? The ground started rumbling, like an earthquake was starting. Unused to tremors not caused by himself, Izuku nearly fell over, but luckily caught himself in time. Run for your life. Panic spread throughout the entire place. A loud rumbling came moving in Izuku's direction. It was the participants. The robots aren't that hard to destroy, why are they so scared? As a massive robot easily dwarfing all of them came into view, it was easy to understand. Staying calm under pressure, Izuku analyzed, that's the 0-pointer. It's easily taller than the surrounding buildings, which I'd estimate to be over 50 meters. I don't have enough energy to shift into the cart, the least draining. Let alone the Colossus. He thought with a startling calmness for somebody in his current position. As the examinees sprinted past Izuku like a horde of elephants, fleeing the slowly approaching behemoth, none tried to help the others. Hopeful heroes with super speed, super strength, and many other useful quirks, abandoning the helpless frozen in fear, trapped beneath building rubble, caused by tremors of the shockwaves the 0-pointer created by just moving. They won't die, it's a test for entry to a high school. Thought the cold, rationalizing part of himself. Created from the intense longing to survive in the unforgiving facility, where mistakes and altruism could lead to the end. The part of him trained to think of only the mission, where everything else is secondary, even his own life. The trapped kids who saw the unmoving Izuku, close enough to get there in time to save them from the robot inching forward, yelled out, begging, please help. The ones frozen in fear managed to turn their heads enough to peer at the motionless boy, looking at them with an unreadable expression. Their petrified eyes seeming to convey what their mouths refused to verbalize. Please save us. As Izuku peered into their eyes, calling for his help, as he heard their desperate shouts of fear, calling to be saved, something small started rising in Izuku, clawing to get out, gradually growing bigger. Something he hadn't truly experienced since his time before the facility. A want, no, a need to help. Overwhelmed by his strong emotional longing, he yelled at the top of his lungs, so hard his throat hurt. An animalistic shout of pure determination, a war cry. Scrounging up energy from his whole body, down to the very cells of his toes, Izuku's body rocketed faster than ever before. Fueled by his burning heroic longing. Quickly raising his hand up to his mouth, and biting harder than necessary because of the adrenaline coursing through his every vein. And as the crimson blood spilled from the bite wound, yellow energy zapped around his body. A strong strike of the same yellow energy descended with vigor, causing small booms from the speed and strength. Out of thin air, bone marrow, muscle fibers, flesh and blood materialized surrounding Izuku, growing to 16 meters tall. As the massive human skeleton formed, so did the muscle and skin enveloping it. Hair a green so dark it was nearly black grew down to its disfigured shoulders. Try as Izuku might, he was already low from his earlier transformation, causing this titan to be lacking the muscles it usually sported. So skinny it looked unnatural, impossible. But Izuku wouldn't let that stop him from trying. The massive zero-pointer scanners noticed the large flash of blinding light, followed by a human of abnormal size emerging from the dust the lightning crash caused. Identifying the titan as a moderate threat, it locked onto it as its target. The 70-meter electronic beast raised its right arm as fast as it could, getting ready to move it down with enough power to knock a human of that size out without lethality. Izuku piloted the titan to spread its bony legs and bend its disfigured knees, lifting its arms up to brace for the mighty powerful punch being plunged down at him. The robot's gears clicked into place, shifting around to prepare its metallic arm's descent. And with the quick preparations done, the hammer fell with the force of 1,000,000 men. Wind ripping from the force. The shadow its colossal arm cast growing bigger as it got closer, eclipsing everyone near it in its darkness. Arms braced for impact, crossed in front of his face, Izuku watched the fist growing closer with hard eyes, determined to protect the people behind from the danger it posed. As metal met flesh, the titan roared with effort. Feet sliding back from the power, its forearms' bones groaning, breaking under the intense weight. Steam wafting from its forearms as they healed as quickly as they broke. The power was insane. Immeasurable and unmatched. The titan dug its sliding feet into the ground in a feeble attempt to slow down. The ground rumbled as titan met titan, cracking and parting from the force. The titan managed to stop its march for a split second of victory before the power overwhelmed it yet again. The strain so massive on the titan, its throat constricted with a silent roar scratching its way up. The robot saw the process its punch was managing with the power behind it, so it doubled its power. The impossible strength somehow reached a larger peak. The titan's forearms snapped like twigs under a boulder's pressure. Izuku started seeing black in the corners of his vision. It's too much, he thought with effort. The pace in which the titan was sliding back tripled. As the leg's bones broke so harshly under the force, it pierced out of the flesh in the opposite direction, falling to its back, slowly being ground into the pavement of the road, leaving a train of red smears that evaporated like water in a kettle shortly after. His healing was failing, being damaged faster than the slowing regeneration could fix. It wouldn't be long until the healing stopped altogether as a result of his exhaustion, and if that happened, he could quite possibly die. The robot's fist's circuitry was being gradually damaged by the heat of the steam being emitted. As the damage became worse and worse, it slowly started being damaged up to its arm. And as a result of the faulty circuitry, the power started waning, becoming weaker and weaker. Just as Izuku's tired and exhausted body failed and passed out, so did the robot's arms stop working. The robot, seeing Izuku was no longer a threat, was ready to start wreaking more havoc. Until the buzzer rang out signaling the end of the test. The robot slowly stopped moving, becoming stationary as nurses and helpers came to collect the participants as Izuku slept while the titan body around him slowly decomposed. He dreamt of a perfect world where he was the next symbol of peace, and his purpose was to protect everyone. Dizziness. Extremely, Debilitating, mind-numbing dizziness was all he felt as he slowly opened his viridian eyes filled with crust. His whole world was spinning. Trying to raise his hands to his head to rub his temples in that moment was the single hardest experience of Izuku's life. Yet all that effort was wasted, as the massage did little to soothe the migraine pounding in his head like a sledgehammer. His sight was blurry, but he still tried to make out his surroundings. It was all a splotch of dull gray, his unfocused eyes unable to process details. Closing his dry eyes, he stopped the massage of the sides of his head to rub away the crust in his eyes. Setting his hands down in his lap, he took long, slow blinks to try and clear his fuzzy sight. Eyes finally coming into focus, he surveyed his surroundings. He was laid down on a gurney-type bed with white sheets in a room full other beds like his in a row. Light gray cabinets presumably used for medicine storage, and a door leading out into what was likely a waiting room. Looking over himself, Izuku saw no cables or any other equipment attached to himself. No injuries, I'm likely only here to rest for a while. A drawback of my quirk is extreme exhaustion after all. He checklisted. As he prepared to clamber out of bed, a short old lady with an extremely wrinkled face walked in not looking pleased. Izuku's confusion as to her expression was quickly answered with the yelling that quickly enveloped the room. "What were you thinking, young man?" She yelled out at Izuku. Izuku's expression quickly lost all emotion, seeming to shut down. "What you did was reckless, irresponsible, and completely unnecessary." She steamrolled through the reasons, not noticing or uncaring to Izuku's unhealthy behavior. Izuku's mind turned off. Something he learned to do there. The best thing to do while being reprimanded was to stay silent and not move a muscle. Eventually they get bored and either walk away, or you get put in the isolation chamber for annoying them. Any and all back-talk wasn't tolerated. If you even breathed the wrong way while they were talking, you were punished with severe beatings, and sometimes you lost a couple fingernails. Halfway through her rant, she noticed his dead expression. Noticed how his shoulders were hunched in, trying to make him appear as small as possible. His hands clenched shut in his lap. His body clenched as if ready to be struck at any moment. And her yelling suddenly stopped. The room suddenly so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. It was startling how the room was filled with the loud yell of the elder one second, then the next as quiet as could be. Her angry expression slowly morphed to one of concern and sadness. He seemed to have closed himself off to the outside world. "You're right. It was a mistake, and I shouldn't have done that. I promise it won't happen again." His voice spoke in a near whisper. Immediately regretting her impulsive decision to loudly scold the boy upon seeing the reaction it brought, she tried a new direction. "I'm sorry for yelling, I was just worried. Your body was past the breaking point, and the only reason you didn't suffer any permanent damage, let alone die, was yours and my quirk." She spoke softly, with real concern in her voice. Izuku himself was confused. She was worried about him. It seemed like such a foreign concept to him. No one worried about him, not even his best friend Antatsu. Was she not concerned that by prioritizing the lives and safety of expendable civilians, he risked not completing his set task? The mission that was brutally programmed to always be his first concern. And the confusion showed through his face, which only served to crush the elder more. Something like concern and worry about him were strange. "But my name is Recovery Girl, what's yours, young man?" She slowly questioned. "Izuku Midoriya, it's Eren," he spoke softly. Recovery Girl waited a couple seconds for him to continue to his last name. When it was clear after multiple beats of silence he wouldn't continue, she asked, "Eren," clearly signaling for him to tell her his last name. "Just Eren," he informed. Recovery Girl looked even more concerned at his apparent refusal to tell her his full name. Izuku, knowing she would keep asking similar questions, racked his brain for reasons to escape without much alarm. His body seemed to snap back to vibrant and full of life, no longer motionless and small. His eyes returned their usual dim shine and he told her with a voice full of energy, "Sorry, but my friend's waiting for me. I don't know how long I was out for, so I don't want to keep him waiting any longer." He told her quick with no time for rebuttals. Springing out of bed faster than an excited 10-year-old on Christmas morning, Izuku made his way to the exit, quickly opening the door to the infirmary and stepping out. Closing the door behind himself, he walked down the corridor, looking for the exit to the maze of a school. Finally reaching an exit, one of many in and out of the massive building, relief instantly washed over him. His tense and uncomfortably stiff posture relaxing just a tad bit to reflect said relief. He could remember everything that happened with effort. His strained and exhausted mind at the time struggled to process everything, but it did a manageable job, providing him the basics with a lack of fine details and a bit of non-comprehension. Every movement was a battle of will. His body and mind still exhausted as he trudged his way out of the school grounds through the main gate, his eyes fluttering shut just for them to open wide in an effort to stay focused and awake. His body was slumped overall. Just looking at him would give anyone a sense of a sleep-deprived insomniac. But Izuku was going to make it back to the apartment, mark his words. After having made it into the streets of Mizudafu and walked a couple more minutes in a vague direction he knew to be the apartment's location, he spotted a bus stop by his side of the road. Thinking of it, he made his slow journey of all of 10 meters and sat under the cover the bus stop provided. No one else was around, which Izuku was thankful for. Being an introvert, Izuku didn't much like conversations. Growing up in the facility made sure of that. He thought with bitterness and vitriol. That place made a fuckfest of his social abilities. Something that isolates you and stopped social interaction with anyone was going to breed a nasty case of social anxiety, a feeling of disconnectedness and trouble reading social cues. To elaborate, Izuku didn't hate talking to people in and of itself. He hated his inability to talk to and connect with others. After a while of only being able to think someone's silently judging you, looks down on you, or the overall uncomfortableness of interactions, one tends to just stop trying. He caught sight of the bus that took this route down the road, steadily coming towards his location. Sighing, he accepted all the effort it would take to lug his heavy body up to signal the driver to pull over. Getting on the bus and not bothering to tap on, he made his way to the farthest back seats of the bus. As he collapsed down to his seat, he took note of how little people were catching it. Only 2 other people inhabited the bus, not including himself. An elderly man with a stocky build. He wore beige cargo pants and a buttoned-up plain white t-shirt sporting very obvious mutation quirk that affected his head. The other was a girl he presumed to be around his age, couldn't be too sure nowadays. She had smooth dark green hair, looking almost black in the correct light, much like his own, that curled towards the end of their length that reached past her shoulders. She had a slim but toned definition, if the black CRP top sporting a small cartoon green T-Rex on her right BRST was any indication. The CRP top showed her stomach, which held a noticeable muscle definition, but wasn't bulging. She sported Merlot red skin-tight leggings to match her appearance, with normal white running shoes. As he subtly observed her, he took immediate knowledge of her sweaty and tired appearance. She looks worse than me, wonder what she got up to. He thought inquisitively, but disregarded the thoughts. Deciding to pass the time by looking out of the window, he rested his face in his palm that was supported by the little flat space created by the window. His face rumbling occasionally much like the bus, but he was too tired to care. As he sat there waiting, his eyes grew heavier. Lulled to sleep by the rocks of his body, he fell into a light snooze. Viridian green eyes snapped open as the bus went over a particularly terrible pothole. Startled awake, Izuku looked out the window he was leaning up against in his stupor, and realized he was nearing his stop. When it was finally time, he pressed the stop button to signal to the driver someone wanted to get off. As the bus came to a halt, Izuku got up out of his seat with his backpack strapped to his person and walked to the bus's door. As he stepped out onto the pavement of the sidewalk, he turned in the direction of his address. Still slightly dozy from his impromptu nap on the bus, he shuffled his way back to his apartment, perpetually on alert, a byproduct of his childhood. Plus, as he entered his building's entrance and made his way for the stairs, he was greeted by a middle-aged man. "Good afternoon, young man, you look awful, are you all right?" he asked with a slight amount of concern. "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I'm all right," Izuku tried smiling. It came out awkward and forced. The man raised an eyebrow at the strange behavior. Other people in the apartment complex talked about two teenagers who were often described as awkward and non-social. This must be one of them. He hazarded a guess, which was correct. Midoriya, feeling uncomfortable, slowly started moving to the stairs again. He felt the quizzical and judgy stare boring into the back of his head as he ascended. Staring at the shabby door of a rundown apartment, he thought of what had happened in the previous 24 hours. The moment he had been raised for had just taken place, yet he didn't feel nervous. He wondered why. Izuku walked through 𝐻𝐸𝐽𝑒 gates by himself, looking around at the schoolyard in mild interest. As he took slow steps forwards, not really paying attention to his feet and what might be in their path. He felt his foot catch on something, causing him to momentarily lose his balance. Before he had the chance to right himself, he felt a weird sensation take over his body. He felt his feet leave the ground, and it seemed like he was unaffected by gravity as he started floating slightly off of the ground. "Are you okay? Sorry for using my quirk on you without your permission, but I figured you wouldn't mind. Who wants to fall over on the first day of school? Anyway, I've got to get to class, bye." A girl around Izuku's height called back to him as she ran ahead. The feeling of Earth's gravitational pull returned and he landed back on his feet. He looked down at the slightly upturned tile that he lost his balance to with an annoyed face. He had managed to get into the class without drawing too much attention and was currently sitting at his desk waiting for the bell to ring. All the other students had arrived and were talking amongst themselves in small groups. Suddenly the other kids stopped talking as a gruff and monotone voice called out, "Be quiet." Everyone turned to the source of the voice. A man in his early 30s to late 40s with long black hair and stubble shuffled into the classroom with something he was carrying under his arm. "My name is Shoyuda Aizawa, and from today on I'll be your homeroom teacher. Now put your gym uniforms on, we're doing a practical test this lesson." "But sir, what about orientation?" The girl he recognized from outside asked the homeless-looking man. "We're skipping it." He dryly responded, "He's obviously a no-bullshit kind of person. But how will we know our way around the school?" She persisted. "Not my problem. Now hurry up, meet me at field 3. If you take more than 7 minutes, you're expelled." The changing room was basic, but that didn't surprise Izuku. Why would they spend so much money on something so trivial? He got changed into his gym clothes, and as his locker door shut closed, his head suddenly felt like it was struck by a sledgehammer, his vision blurred, and he shut his eyes tight waiting for the pain to stop. In an instant the ground felt different. The concrete ground of the change room's floor now gave under his weight. The pain stopped as suddenly as it started, and he cracked his eyes open. His surroundings had changed. No longer the basic changing room of 𝐸𝐸𝐽𝐻. Now all around him there was nothing but sand for miles and miles, as far as his eyes could see. The sky was dark like it was night, and there were multiple visible stars in the sky. But the most striking feature of this place was this tree of light in the distance with branches branching out in all directions and the girl standing in front of it in the distance. Izuku, having experienced this before, remained calm. In the past, when he lost control of his emotions, he immediately snapped back to reality. Flashes of images entered his mind, images of naked giants eating defenseless people that were running away. Civilizations inside of 3 massive walls with people going about their lives. Mizudafu overrun and in ruins, no heroes in sight. A man standing behind 3 girls that were eating a body lying on a table. Hundreds of thousands of skinless giants that resembled Izuku's trump card trampled over towns and people. A skinny and frail man standing off against a burly man in a suit wearing a helmet in a city's ruins. Izuku clutched his head and looked out at the girl. The last time he saw her was nearly a year ago. Then she looked like a young girl, maybe 10 years old, but when Izuku looks at her now, she clearly looks like a teenager. Now that he thought about it, over the years on his infrequent visits to this strange place, her age greatly fluctuated. She would be a child in one visit, then an adult in the next, then be an even younger child than the first time. And then Izuku blinked. His eyes opened and his surroundings were the change room again. He looked around, and it seemed like no time had passed. He pressed his head against the locker and closed his eyes. These episodes were getting more frequent, and it was really worrying him. A 50-meter dash was the first test they were faced with. Izuku was waiting for his turn when he overheard the others conversing with each other. He felt a pang in his chest, but ignored it. He was used to this feeling of longing. Denki Kaminari, Mashireo Ojiro, Kyoka Jiro, Izuku Midoriya and Mina Ashido, your turn. The others started making their way to the starting line, but Izuku jogged away from everyone else. Okay, I need to transform, but which will I use? The cart. It has great endurance but little else. The others made it to the start line. The attack. Great strength, it's large so provides greater travel speed but it consumes stamina like no one's business. The others turned to look at him quizzically, wondering why he was just standing in place. I should probably use the 𝐻𝐸. It's pretty great all around. Alright, I'll use the 𝐻𝐸. Everyone was about to call out to him when he brought his hand up to his mouth and tore into its flesh with his teeth hard enough to draw a significant amount of blood. He focused on making the explosion of his transformation as small as was possible. Everyone who saw cried out in shock, eyes opening wide as saucers, and some even gasped audibly. Even the teacher, who had remained despondent and lethargic throughout the test so far, seemed to perk up, eyes sharpening and ready to intervene when suddenly sparks flitted around Izuku. No less than a second passed before the sky quaked, clouds parted, and a lightning bolt struck Izuku straight on. The force of the impact was considerably less than it should have been thanks to his efforts to minimize the force of impact. A ball of yellow energy at the base of the lightning died down and a quadruped humanoid of 5 meters tall emerged from the mini crater left behind. Everyone looked on shocked, baffled as to what the hell had just happened to their classmate. If you asked, Izuku wouldn't admit to enjoying the astonished looks on their faces. They were all about to clamor around Izuku before Aizawa strong-armed the situation back under his control, and the tests continued on normally. Izuku hadn't left his large body, opting to remain in it to avoid having to transform multiple times. The main challenge he had faced so far was the grip strength test. At first, he thought he might have to eject from his monster, but Aizawa informed him that the school had multiple different sizes to account for mutations and size-changing quirks. From then it had been smooth sailing. The next test began, the ball throw. Aizawa had used Bakugo for a demonstration. The blonde propelled the ball 705. 2 meters with a large explosion. The next student, a boy with 6 arms, threw the ball 57. 6 meters. The next student, the girl who had saved him from face-planting, managed to get a score of infinity, which, while impressive, wasn't really surprising. Her quirk for a literal perfect match for this test. A few students came up to talk to him and ask questions about his quirk and such. In his 𝐻𝐸 form he could talk, but it was deep, scratching, and almost incomprehensible. Most left after realizing they couldn't really hold that great of a conversation with him like this, but the ones who could understand what he was saying stuck around. The test went on and Izuku lost interest in the others' scores and zoned out. It wasn't until his name was called that he lumbered over to Aizawa. He got close enough to reach out his hand. It was large enough that he could comfortably grab Aizawa and lift him up. Aizawa dropped the ball into his massive palm and stepped back. Don't forget, you need to use all your power on this test. No half-assing it. Plus ultra and all that. He grumbled at him, looking at him intensely, almost as if waiting for him to do something. Izuku stomped his way to the circle, ball in massive hand, before realizing he was too large to properly fit in it. He looked over at Aizawa, and before he could ask, the teacher said, "Just stay within the circle as much as you can," sounding annoyed and staring at him with even more intensity than before. Put off by his behavior, Izuku turned back to his task at hand, and threw the ball with as much force as he could muster. It flew into the distance and everyone turned to Aizawa waiting for him to announce the score. The tablet read 327. 7 meters. Midoriya, did you put your all into that throw? Confused by the question, Izuku answered honestly, yes I did. And though it was a statement, it came out sounding more like a question. I can't help but find that hard to believe, considering your other, he trailed off, trying to find the right word. Form showed enough strength to match the 0-pointer. He stated sharply. The kids all murmured at the tidbit of information that Izuku was seemingly strong enough to contest the 0-pointer. Transforming takes a lot of energy. I didn't see the need to do so. He replied through the giant's body. You think you can half-but this, do you? He asked in a monotone voice with an underlying edge. No, 𝗵𝗃, you will put everything into this test, 100% and no less, or you're expelled. Izuku hadn't been half-assing the test, but he certainly hadn't been putting his all into it. Why should he? He thought there wouldn't be any consequences as long as he wasn't the poor chap who came last, and if his calculations were correct, he was in the top 5. But now with the very real threat of being expelled, there was a serious consequence. Not only would he be expelled from his old dream school, they would be seriously angry. And that meant a very serious punishment that he couldn't risk. Immediately he sobered up and focused his full attention on this test. Do you have any other forms that are stronger than the one you used during the entrance exam? He asked. Physically. Yes, 1 inch, then use it. He demanded. Izuku hesitated before saying, I can't. Why? Aizawa growled with narrowed eyes, glowering a hole into the significantly larger creature before him. The transformation would kill everyone within at least 200 meters if unprotected by strong quirks. Izuku stated so matter-of-factly Aizawa actually believed him. Use the next best thing that doesn't kill anyone then. He told him with no room for argument. The giant nodded its head. It quickly retreated from Aizawa, copying Izuku's actions earlier of moving to an empty space away from people. And just as suddenly as the first transformation, a dome of yellow electricity and energy 16 meters tall engulfed the quadruped, and a 16-meter-tall giant emerged. While the quadruped had been ripped with muscles, this behemoth had muscles on muscles. It was ripped to an unrealistic and impossible degree. Its face had a jagged mouth with no lips, its nose was round and had a pointed tip, it had sunken viridian green eyes, and when it exhaled, steam wafted out with its breath. Strangely, he had long brown hair that fell onto its face, and to complete the look of this monster were the elongated ears, much like an elf's. He traveled the distance between Aizawa and himself with a single step that shook and cracked the ground. He kneeled, careful not to squash his teacher under himself, and placed his hand that easily dwarfed the man in size down so he could hand him a second ball to throw. Standing up, he moved to the circle, and 1 foot alone easily took up all the space. He cocked back his massive arm, preparing to throw the ball with as much force possible. The monster Izuku referred to as Attack, he was still working on the names nearly a decade later, had an incredible amount of strength. In fact, if you were to take a person with the impossible musculature of the Attack and grow them to the same size, the Attack would still be much stronger. Its strength just wasn't natural for a human the size of a giant. But its incredible strength had a downside. It was so strong its body literally couldn't handle the force. The bones would break, muscle tendons would tear, skin would rip apart, and it would destroy its own body. So usually Izuku had to hold back. After all, losing a limb in a fight could spell your demise. And even though it would regenerate, the regeneration process still took a couple minutes. And a couple minutes in a fight were eternity. But with the threat of expulsion hanging over his head, he threw caution to the wind, uncaring of what his classmates and teacher would see or what they might think about the gruesome sight. His arm's muscles rippled with effort, veins bulging grotesquely, and threw his arm forward with so much speed and strength it kicked up a windstorm and caused a sonic boom. His arm ripped itself apart from the elbow down, steaming blood splattered over the ground, muscle tendons hung from the stump of his arm and the bone of his arm was slightly protruding. His classmates steadied themselves after being buffeted by the strong winds and opened their eyes to the sight. It was like something from a slasher film. Most of his classmates screamed in horror, some threw up and some outright fainted. The most muted reaction came from the boy Aizawa called Todoroki. The extent of his reaction was a brief look of horror before he quickly composed it to a mere look of shock. His stump steamed as blood spilled from the amputation, the bone slowly growing outwards, which was quickly wrapped with muscle. He focused on the regeneration of his arm and the speed visibly quickened by several paces. He turned to Aizawa who, much like Todoroki, hid his concerned expression with a mask of tiredness. Then he looked to sky and let out the deafening roar of emotions that have forever been locked away inside. What's your quirk? Ochako asked Izuku. You're able to become a giant. But you also have different form thingies, and you can regenerate. How does that work? As she asked the question, she progressively got closer and closer, until she was less than a couple inches from his face with an amazed and equal parts inquisitive look. My quirk is, Izuku trailed off. He wasn't comfortable talking about it, but didn't want to come off as weird by refusing to answer. I don't really have a name for it, to be honest. And it was the truth. His quirk might have been registered as Giant, but that's the name the Hero Association gave it, and for some reason, to Izuku it didn't feel right. To be honest, I don't really know the specifics, like how I can regenerate, and why I have different forms. I just know I can. He shrugged weakly with a wan smile. He told a half-truth. He didn't really know how, but he had theories. She pouted and stepped back. Quickly regaining her bubbly and cheerful personality, she perked up when someone started approaching the two of them. It was the tall boy with engines in his calves and glasses on his square face. He walked with a certain gait, kind of robotic if Izuku had to put a word to it. Greetings, my name is Tenya Ida. I was curious as to the nature of your quirk, if you don't mind my asking. He exclaimed with a serious, no-nonsense direct question. I know, right? It has so many different abilities. It's like multiple quirks all squished into one. Ochako practically vibrated with excitement. Yes, it is quite uncommon, though not unheard of for quirks to have multifaceted quirks. He said so loud he might as well have been yelling. Another classmate started heading in their direction and Izuku was starting to get annoyed. He didn't like social interaction that much, even though so long ago he had pined for friendship. He couldn't tell if he didn't like purely for the fact it was difficult for him, or if he simply didn't care anymore. The classmate who started approaching, more like jogging towards them, had spiked vibrant red hair with matching red eyes, one of which had a small scar. He had a wide grin with spiky teeth, reminding Izuku of a shark. Yo, Midoriya, right? Your quirk is so manly, man. He shouted with gusto. Seriously. As gross as it was, the fact you threw the ball so hard your arm literally tore apart Kirishima had been one of the few to throw up was so cool. He yelled again with manly tears running down his face. Izuku quirked an eyebrow. Of the many reactions he had expected of his classmates, getting compliments for literally lopping off his arm through sheer force wasn't one of them. Oh my god. I completely forgot about that. She had fainted. Are you okay? Ochako asked, suddenly now very concerned with his well-being, and eyeing his right arm with concern. Yes, that was very irresponsible of you. Even if you can regenerate and Mr. Aizawa told you to use all of your power, you shouldn't do so if it costs you so dearly. Ida exclaimed with a weird chopping motion of his hand. I'm fine, really, don't worry about it. That thing isn't really my body. I'm sure you all saw me crawl out of the neck, right? Izuku questioned. 3 nods answered him. It's kind of like, Izuku tried to think of how to explain it. Like a giant fleshy mech suit. He trailed off, not really sure if he was describing it well. So you can't really feel anything it does? Ochako questioned curiously, tilting her head like a puppy. Not really, but kind of. I can feel everything, otherwise I wouldn't know if I had a hole in my chest, or that I was missing a limb without looking. I can feel everything, but the pain's not the same as if I lost my real arm. It still hurts, but to a much lesser degree. He explained. As the 4 of them made their way to the train station, they made small talk, with Izuku not really speaking unless spoken to. They talked about normal teenager stuff. Ochako spoke about her interests, space, Heroes 13 specifically, and action movies. Tenya spoke of his own interests, mainly comprising of training with his brother, spending time with his family, and other mundane things that Izuku didn't really care for. Kirishima, however, spoke of his favorite hero, Crimson Riot, who was his main inspiration. Something buried deep within Izuku stirred, and despite himself, he felt his excitement rush to his face. Something all 3 of them saw. Of course, seeing the most quiet and introverted of all 4 of them suddenly light up at a specific conversation, the 3 of them quietly agreed to keep this specific topic going. Izuku of course recognized this and didn't know how to feel. So he pushed away his thoughts for now, and decided to just focus on the conversation. As the four of them departed and got on their trains, Izuku decided maybe socializing wasn't too bad after all, with a small genuine smile on his face. A couple days had passed and the class all formed their cliques. Izuku usually hung around Ochako, Tenya, and Eiju. They had all gotten close enough to hesitantly say they were friends, but they were friends nonetheless. It was the final class of the day, and it was heroics training. Apparently All Might himself was teaching this class personally. What do you think we'll be doing? One-on-one combat, hostage situations, rescue training. The possibilities are endless. Ochako murmured excitedly. I hope we'll be doing some combat. I'd like a chance to show off how manly I am. Eiju grinned his sharp grin back in response. Izuku hoped it would be something simple and easy. Izuku wasn't usually the type to half-but things, but he didn't need hard training on top of the training he endured at the facilities. Okay, who do you think would win in a fight bet we dash? Whatever Kirishima was about to ask was interrupted by the class door sliding open with a bang. Have no fear, I am here. Coming through this door. The class erupted into chaotic noise, with no one voice distinguishable among the rest. All Might quickly settled the class by speaking with his booming voice. Quiet down, children. We have much to do, with such little time. Grab the suitcase with you hero suit and meet me at training ground beta as fast as you can. And with nothing else he slipped out of the classroom quicker than the eye could see. Oh yeah, we get to wear our hero suits. This is gonna be awesome. Oh my god. Your PP is huge, my guy. Kirishima said in a loud voice. On 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Izuku asked. On God FR no cap. I would 𝗧𝗵𝐿 no 𝐻MO. Izuku whipped his massive 5-foot PP around the locker room like a WP. Everyone else in the room suddenly yelped as the massive PP swung over their heads as they dropped to the ground. The PP left carvings in the walls as the force of the swing was so hard. Izuku moaned out as his phallus impacted with the ground when the force of the swing died down. Eren Yeowager. You know what they say, Kaken? What the Sigma? Deku said to Bakugo. Deku. What are you talking about, nerd? Katsuki screamed in his face with spittle flying everywhere, including Izuku's mouth. Deku let out an 𝗳𝗲𝗵𝗲 as the spit entered his mouth. Bakugo blushed violently, but not as violent as the way I molested my best friend. You know, Kaken, usually my titans don't have genitalia. But that's not because they don't have penises. It's because I don't want to embarrass little shrimp PP Neos like you. Dikiyu. Bakugo roared at him, but compared to the roars of anguish and sigma alphaness of Izuku's titans, he might as well have mewled like a little kitten. Weak, compared to me as usual. Izuku looked smug. Prepare to be bent over my knee, Deku. I'm gonna spank you so damn hard. Bakugo yelled, Ha yeah right. Prepare Kaken. Deku screamed as he bit his hand and transformed his big veiny 𝗳𝗏. Bakugo proceeded to get violently and non-consensually pegged for hours on end until his girlfriend came to collect him, only to get F in front of him. Yes, that's right, Bakugo got cucked by Izuku's veiny 𝗳𝗏.